Hey guys, Josh here, and today I'm going to be walking you through weeks 1 through 3 as I learn the piano using the PianoForAll program. And so far I can really tell some improvement. My left hand finger position has gotten easier to do, and switching between chords has also gotten easier. And what I'll do is I'll break down each week for you, sort of what I've learned, and then difficulties that I've had in each of those weeks. So if we start with week 1, it was all about chords. And if you watched my previous video, I already talked about that a little bit. It teaches a lot of chord rhythms and a lot of chord progressions using both modern songs and older songs. And what I like about it is that it doesn't just teach basic chord progressions, but it also teaches more advanced chord progressions. So if we take a basic chord progression like the following, it's very common in pop music, but it can get a little stale. So we learn a little bit more advanced chord progressions as we go on through book 1. So here's an example. So that's just one example of how you can add more complex progressions to your playing. So I really like that aspect. If we move on to the latter half of the first week, we learn 7th chords, which are arguably one of my favorite chords as of now. If we take a D major here, and we modify it just a little bit, yeah, we get this really cool sounding chord that has a very interesting character to it and adds just another dynamic to your playing. So I was really glad that I was able to learn that so early off in the program. As far as my difficulties in week 1, the primary one was just switching chords, jumping around the keyboard, because when you go through the progressions, it does have you jump around. So you'll be going from C to A to F to G, and when you're trying to keep timing, it can get difficult. So if the spacing between your fingers are even just a little bit off, you'll end up hitting the wrong key and having a pretty foul sounding chord. So that took a while to get used to. I am better at it now, but certainly a struggle in that first week. Okay, moving on to week 2. So I'm still on book 1, and it was a hefty book. It's over 100 pages, and it teaches more chord progressions as well as more complex chord progressions using left-handed bass runs. So to give you an example of that, if we take a C major chord here and just play it like that, it's okay, it sounds alright, but it's not very interesting. But if we add a left-hand bass run to it, it can sound more dynamic. So just another way to add some complexity to your playing. Another thing that we learned during that second week is I actually moved on to the second book, which was all about blues. And if I'm being honest, I don't really like blues. It's not my thing, but I figured I'd just suck it up and go through the book. And I was glad that I did, because it teaches a lot of progressions using more advanced left-hand bass runs, and so that really improved my left-hand dexterity. So if you're into blues, it'll certainly be a good book to go through, but if you're not, I would still recommend that you go through it anyway, just to improve that left-hand dexterity. As far as difficulties during that second week, I still had trouble switching between chords, and then the other new challenge that arose was that syncing the left and right hands was also a challenge. Because of those more complex bass runs in the blues book, it was difficult at times to multitask my left and right hands. Something I'm still working through, but it's something that I'll get better at over time. So if we move on to week 3, I moved on to book 3, and that is a continuation of more chords. But this time it teaches you how to form every single major and minor chord on the keyboard using an easy memory trick. So if I want to play an A flat major, I know that that's going to be there. Or if I want to play a D flat minor, I know that that's going to be there. So it's just nice in that you don't really have to think about how to form each chord because of that memory trick that's given to you. The other thing that it teaches is how to not jump around the keyboard so much when you are playing chord progressions. And that was my initial struggle, was jumping around so much. So this gives you a way so that you can play more organically and a little less robotic. So if we take a chord progression like the following, so my right hand jumps around a little bit, but we can modify that in the following way. So it just makes things more organic sounding, and it certainly makes it easier to play. The last thing is that Book 3 teaches you the chords utilizing the black keys, something that was largely omitted in the first two books. And for good reason, it's difficult. What I'll do is I will play you what I consider to be the most challenging piece that I can play relatively okay. It's a Carpenters song. I don't remember the name of it, but if you know the Carpenters, maybe it will ring a bell. So not perfect, but it is something that's difficult for me to do, getting used to hitting those black keys. And I think the thing of it is that because the black keys are obviously smaller, my fingers just tend to slide off of them. So that ends up me hitting the wrong chord, and that's just something that I have to work on. So from here on out, what I'll do is I'll try to post an update every week or two just to show you how I'm improving and to tell you how I'm liking this PianoForAll product. So if you have any suggestions on things I should do in the future videos, let me know. If you find them to be helpful, feel free to subscribe. And as always, I'll put a link in the description for the PianoForAll program if you do want to check it out in more detail. I really like it overall. For the money I spent, it's well worth it. I've learned a lot considering the short amount of time that I've had it. So I recommend you check it out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.